Hello. We got a good group of folks here. It's always great to be in Panama City. I've got our Surgeon General for the state of Florida, Joe Ladapo, who's doing a really good job. I got somebody else who is known a little bit around here, our Chief Financial Officer, Jimmy Petronas. I've got Dr. John Ward, who's the President of Dermatology Specialists of Florida. I think he brought all his staff and many of his patients here today. We have Dr. Raj Bendre, he's an oncology specialist, and then we have Dr. Ellen McKnight, who's a rheumatologist, and she has her own private practice in Pensacola, Florida. So I want to welcome all the physicians and everybody else who's here today. You know, we're here today to really stand up for the traditional practice of medicine. I think what we've seen, particularly over the last 2 years, has been a very politicized medical establishment. And they kind of have certain views. A lot of times they're informed by political ideology, unfortunately, very tracking closely with people like Dr. Fauci. And if practitioners dissent from that, you know, there's sometimes movements to have reprisal against that just for trying to practice medicine. If you look at what some of the powers that be have said over the last 2 years, they said lockdown would stop COVID. Then they said, you know, you had to have mask mandates would stop COVID. Then they said schools need. They said the kids had to be forced to wear masks 8 hours a day. Then they said if you got the vaccine, you wouldn't be able to get infected or transmit. So all these things that have been said and have had actually the coercive force of the state behind them in many other places. You know, we're a free state in Florida. We've stood against that. But you've seen a lot of this be imposed against people. People have lost their jobs over these policies. People have lost, their kids have lost access to education over these policies. Their experience has been eroded as a result of a lot of these policies. And there's been huge problems, you know, that have happened with that. And at the end of the day, we made sure that we were choosing freedom really across the board. Yes, keep businesses open. You know, we're doing very well in Northwest Florida. We're happy to see that. We're going to continue to do that. Yes, make sure you're protecting people's constitutional rights. Yes, make sure we have kids in school. Yes, make sure we are not going to let people lose their jobs over vaccine mandates. It's just not going to happen. So, you know, we've done all those things. And if you look, we were down the road in Fort Walton Beach a couple weeks ago announcing that in 2021, Florida set an all-time record for domestic tourism coming into the state of Florida. That's even more than pre-COVID, which is really a testament to the fact that people understand they come here and they can live like normal folks. It's a free state. They're not going to have to show medical papers to be able to go buy a hamburger somewhere. They're going to be able to basically live in a free society. So we're proud of that. But we also understand that for all the good we've done with protecting people's freedoms, you still have more that needs to be done. There's still more threats to freedom. Last year, for example, I had a roundtable. It's probably like February of 2021. I had a roundtable with physicians, big-time medical people, one from Harvard Law School, one from Stanford Medical School, and one from Oxford in the United Kingdom, one of the best epidemiologists in the world. And they were discussing a whole host of things, and their perspective was 180 degrees from Dr. Fauci. They said lockdowns don't work. They said lockdowns are harmful. They were right. Fauci was wrong. They said that kids needed to be in school, and the school closures were bad. And obviously the medical establishment said you couldn't have school for a very long time, and they were wrong, and our physicians were right. They said that you should not force school children to wear cloth masks during the school day. And obviously Fauci and CDC said you have to do this. And these physicians who were at this roundtable were right. But when they were saying all this a year ago, it got censored by Google and YouTube. They actually took the video down because they claimed it was COVID misinformation. And they said that it departed from what the, quote, majority view on some of these things are. Here's the issue. It probably was the majority view that kids needed to be forced masking of people who were willing to speak out, because most people in the medical knew it wasn't good, but they didn't want to speak out because they had fear of reprisal. And so you had some people who were very brave. I mean, the folks we had, the Bhattacharyas and the Kaldorfs and the Gupta, they stood up. They faced a huge amount of fire for just standing up for science and standing up for evidence and saying that it should be evidence-based, not ideology-based. And so this is something that's really, really significant. You have to have protection for the First Amendment rights of people who are practicing medicine. You're not going to have good medicine practice if people are fearful of doing things that the evidence is telling them to do just because it may conflict with the narrative. And so that's why. So a couple months after our roundtable with these practitioners and these researchers was censored, the Federation of State Medical Boards released a threatening statement saying, quote, physicians who generate and spread COVID-19 vaccine misinformation or disinformation are risking disciplinary action by state medical boards, including the suspension or revocation of their medical license. And I think most of you know here, you take away that medical license and you've neutered someone's ability entirely to practice medicine. And so we see this as something that is a big problem, because a lot of what these physicians were doing was basically saying things that ended up being borne out to be true. You know, it's interesting. People that would go against the narrative, like Florida, you go against the narrative, there'd be this like big spasm, and then 6 to 12 months later, everyone will then start doing that, and people realize that it was right. And so it's really dangerous. If you had said a year ago that COVID-19 originated in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, they would absolutely have censored you for that. If you said things that have turned out to be true, when I used to say in the summer that, look, the vaccines are not preventing, they were supposed to be 100% effective or 95% effective at preventing infection. And we saw many people that had, quote, breakthrough cases. So we were seeing that in real time. We're reporting that to people. The media says, oh, that's not true. And now we know, having gone through the last 9 months, how many people who've had COVID over the last 6 months also had been vaccinated. Almost, the vast majority of those folks. So that would have been misinformation then. Now it's a common understanding today. And so this is something that is really significant in terms of the practice of medicine. If you're going to take things, try to impose an official narrative without sufficient evidence, and then punish people who are actually trying to pursue the truth. And so the Florida legislature has actually taken on this issue. They've worked with some stakeholders here who you'll hear from to put together what's called the Free Speech of Healthcare Practitioners Act that has the types of additional protections that we need. They've moved it along. I think they've shown a lot of leadership. It has not gotten across the finish line. So we're here today to say, let's get this thing across the finish line. Let's make sure we can do it. We want to make sure that people can exercise sound judgment. We want doctors to be able to practice medicine and not just be genuflecting to whatever may come out of some of these agencies or professional bodies. And look, I take no joy in saying this. I mean, if you've looked at how CDC has performed over the last last couple years, the fact of the matter is it leaves a lot to be desired. There's a lot of politics, there's a lot of ideology. I mean, just think about how all of a sudden the guidance has changed right before the State of the Union address. Is that how science works? Does the science change based on polling data? Does the science change because you have a midterm election coming up? I mean, no. So we see that, and it just causes people to lose confidence. And so what I think most Floridians want is to be able to work with the folks that they know and trust in the medical profession, and want those doctors to feel free to follow the evidence where it leads them, and to do the best they can for their patients. And so I think this piece of legislation is timely. I think it's important. I think it's sad that we're actually having to do this, quite frankly, because it used to not be like this, but all of a sudden now it just seems like, from big tech to, some of the medical establishment to bureaucracy, they really want to impose one narrative. And if you don't get in line on that, then they try to censor you or pull your license or do all these other things. And that's wrong. That's not what we want in the state of Florida. I mean, we want robust inquiry, robust debate. And we want practitioners to be able to feel that they're going to be protected. So a lot of what we're talking about in this legislation and things that we've talked about is people have a right to access different types of COVID-19 treatments. I mean, if a physician has something that they think can be beneficial, the patient wants to do it, they should be able to do it. You don't want a situation where a doctor wants to administer treatment to somebody and the hospital is telling them they can't do it because of something from CDC or something like that. We want people to be able to access, particularly in these right-to-try situations. It's very, very important. So we want to make sure that that's the case. We want to make sure that physicians feel empowered to be able to do it. And if a hospital system is blocking that type of care, then we will hold the hospital system accountable under Florida law. That's what we're looking to do. So we hope we're able to do, we're getting down to the wire. We've got a little over a week left in the legislative session. I know that this is something that's important to an awful lot of people throughout the state of Florida, and not just for the doctors. I mean, and clearly that has an impact on their daily lives, but individual Floridians, they want to be able to rely on physicians to offer their best judgment. I don't think they just want to be limited to simply recycled Fauciism. I think they want to be able to have a doctor who's going to be able to offer their best perspective based on what's going on. And so that's why we're here today. We hope we can get this done. We've got a bunch of folks who are going to also come up and talk, and I'm going to introduce them. First, I'll introduce our Surgeon General. Dr. Ladapo, from the very beginning of COVID, has been basically saying the emperor has no clothes. He warned against these perpetual lockdowns. He was right about that. He warned against this idea that mask mandates would end COVID. He warned against the harm of having kids out of school. He warned against the problems with coercive vaccine mandate policies. And he's been proven right on all those things. But because he's been proven right, because he has been willing to take on the cathedral, a lot of people don't like him very much because he threatens, a lot of what they've hung their hat on. And so I think it's really refreshing, to have Joe in here fighting the fight, basically fighting for evidence-based medicine, fighting for patients, and fighting for our practitioners to be able to have the freedom to practice. So we'll have Joe come up.
It'd be one thing if, when you're proven right, people acknowledge it, and I'm sorry, you were right. Let's try to do things better. Do you have any other ideas? But nope, none of that. It's just like nothing happened. It's okay for the kids to take the mask off now, and okay, maybe we didn't have to have the passport. We can stop the, but I guess that's the plate that we've been served. So I hope the lawmakers are watching, our Florida lawmakers, because it is really important to have a voice to push back against just the abject dishonesty that has unfortunately infiltrated so deeply in so much of the medical establishment and the scientific establishment. I mean, you'd think that my colleagues have been taken over by zombies or something, given the paucity of physicians and scientists who are willing to be honest. I mean, you have to search you got to search to find them, and unfortunately, they are very much are still in the minority. So it's really important to have a voice that says something that, as the governor said, wish we didn't have to say, but we have to say it, and we have to be explicit about it. It's really important. And it's important because of what the governor said, which is that it is the pathway to truth. You know, if it weren't for doctors like Dr. Bhattacharya, like other doctors around the country, Dr. Martin Kuldoff, if it weren't for doctors like that who were saying something different from the beginning, who knows where we'd be? People would never know the truth. I mean, it's hard, you know. Not everyone went to medical school. Not everyone has a PhD in science or research. So how would people know that, you know, that they've been misled? So it's really important. Speech is the path to truth. We can't find truth without it, and this bill protects it. So I brought something today. I brought a little prop. So, you know, it's hard to find these in Florida. You gotta look hard. But you know, if you know where to look, you can find them. So I brought this, right? So unfortunately, we have a country right now where most people, including, I mean, this is across the political spectrum, think that these things are saving lives. So in medicine, in science, we have something called levels of evidence, okay? And we've got our high-level evidence and lower levels of evidence. And our highest level of evidence are clinical trials. So to the doctors who tell you that these things save lives, ask them, you know, what did the two randomized clinical trials that we've done during the pandemic, what did they show? Ask them that when they tell you that these things save lives. One found nothing, zero benefit. The other found a small benefit, like a tiny benefit that's, you know, that's a little bit methodologically shaky. And by the way, none of them found a benefit in young people. Not a single one found a benefit in young people. That's the highest quality evidence. That's what it showed. Lower evidence is what the CDC likes to tout. You know, shaky studies, shaky methods, finding 80% reductions in infection. Give me a break, you know? I mean, come on. You know, nothing that we're seeing in this country justifies that kind of conclusion. So that's what the evidence shows. And doctors who said that these things are not going to save your life. You know, these things aren't going to end the pandemic. These doctors, they've been kicked off of social media. Like, these are facts. They've had their licenses suspended, you know, because they didn't think that their clinical practices needed to do that. I mean, that's crazy. Good doctors who were brave enough to say what the science showed got punished. And that's happening, and it's still happening, where people are still holding up the illusion that these things save lives. These things are not saving lives. What saves lives, frankly, is freedom to speak and freedom to find truth. What saves lives is immunity, you know? Early treatment saves lives, you know? And being as healthy as you can, right? Losing the extra pounds, eating a nutritious diet, you know, keeping your vitamin D levels up. Those things save lives. No high quality data says this saved any lives. And it's a lie, and it needs to stop. And people need to unbelieve it. All right. Give me my...
You're about to get in trouble.
You know, there's, you know, when you're in politics, you do different events, and like, you know, I speak at things or whatever, and you always look. And I always look to say, okay, who's speaking right before me? And there's some guys, you know, like Coach Lou Holtz is a friend of mine. You know, I never want to speak after Lou Holtz. I mean, because it'll be down. Well, you know, Jimmy's got to speak after Joe Latipo. So, you know, I didn't necessarily plan it that way, but come on, man.
You know, so Governor, thank you for being here in Bay County. Dr. Latipo gets an opportunity to share what he knows, his expertise, his knowledge. But you know what? It doesn't happen if it isn't for this guy right here. You know what I mean? I still, and I'm at home, Governor. These are the folks that I grew up with. My wife graduated from this campus, and I still I go out to the restaurant on weekends, and I got stopped by a customer walking out the other day, and I still can't turn off restaurant mode. I've got people walking out. They don't know who the CFO is, but they'll stop me and they'll say, "I'm from Nashville, and I love your governor." And all they know is I'm a representative of the state of Florida because I'm a citizen here, and I'm thanking them for coming to my business, and they want to tell the common person that they love Ron DeSantis, you know? So just tell me, you know, do y'all love him? I can't hear you. So never in the last 2 years has this governor allowed any daylight to get between him and a solution on behalf of the citizens of the state of Florida. He has worked tirelessly making sure that the science was available, but there was options, whether it be monoclonal treatment centers, whether it be in making sure every single option was available here. I see Shane here. Shane, and we've talked about all the different questions that would come into his pharmacy and ask for solutions because you live in the free state of Florida, because you've got a governor here that wants to make sure you've got choices, you have options, and that these options that you've got are safe for you. There's opportunities where I travel all over the place. I'm in Illinois or Louisiana, and I see these economies that have been destroyed because of the lockdown states of these rogue, you know, blue state governance policies. And I hate it because one thing I've learned in the last 2 years is political science wins over real science every day of the week. And it's a shame to have to tell you that. It's a shame to have to be that honest with you. But the agendas that get run in these other states have done nothing but hurt those states. That's why you're having 900 people a day moving to the state of Florida. And I know what you're thinking. Are the people that are moving to the state of Florida, are they, I heard the grunt, I heard it. I know you, are the people that are moving here, are they going to change the voting profile of the state? And I'm going to tell you, no, they're not. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to make this political, but it is what it is. I'm a politician. So, in the registration of this state, we have the first time in the history of the state of Florida, we've got more registered Republicans than registered Democrats. The only reason why is because of the leadership the governor has shown. The governor has shown yes. The leadership the governor has shown that the state of Florida is going to allow the people to live, and you're going to live safely. We have got the lowest crime rate of any of the states. There's so many great things about the state of Florida, but I'm going to close with this, and I think what's so important. What's he doing today? He's back in Bay County. I was going to let you know, he comes to Bay County all the time. He was here about 2 weeks ago. He was here like a dozen times after Hurricane Michael. He was here. I mean, I like that he loves Bay County so much. But what is he doing here today? He's honoring these guys, you know? This guy looks out for first responders. He looks out for our law enforcement. He looks out for our healthcare heroes. And, you know, my niece is a PA. She's worked more in the last 2 years than she's ever worked her whole entire life. And you know what? She's in the emergency room, and I'm so proud of her because of what she does for her profession. And she stood up just like all these people have, just like, you know, the doctors and the physicians and the nurses out here and the pharmacists. Thank you for what you've done. And I love that this governor wants to honor y'all by fighting for legislation that allows you to do your job. God bless.
Okay, one of the engines behind this movement, Dr. John Ward.
Thank you, Governor. I'm here today to speak about an issue that's very important to me and physicians throughout the nation. Your doctors are being silenced. Their ability to earn a living and care for patients is being threatened. And I am ever blessed to be in the state of Florida where public health decisions are led by data and not the dogma of Dr. Fauci. Our children stayed in school these last 2 years, and my own children never had to wear a mask in public school. Thanks to the governor's liability protection bill, I was able to prescribe early treatment to hundreds of patients that the system had failed. These were people who were told to go home, take Tylenol, and come back to the ER when they couldn't breathe. Our Governor, Ron DeSantis, and our Surgeon General, Joe Ladapo, made Florida the first state in the nation to remove quarantine of healthy children in schools, and that was so important. Our governor called and led a special session that gave our workers protection from vaccine mandates. But the governor's work is not yet done, and our healthcare heroes need his help once again. And as he has done every time in the state of Florida for the last 2 years when Floridians needed his help, he is answering the call. Florida physicians are being threatened by their certification boards. These unaccountable private entities are calling any deviations from the ever-changing CDC recommendations as misinformation. And they are threatening to pull the board certifications of Florida physicians. Hospitals, surgery centers, and insurance companies use these certifications as a marker for physician competence, and that is what they used to be. But now these certifying boards have become political arms of the CDC and Big Pharma, and they are going after your doctors. In the middle of a pandemic, public health policy debates are a necessity. But Dr. Fauci, Big Pharma, they orchestrated with a compliant media the takedown of any physician who didn't echo the narrative that we needed to mask school children and we didn't need to make vaccines mandatory. And remember, when you've silenced your physicians, it's no longer silence, it's propaganda. Those courageous enough to speak out are now being threatened throughout the nation and even here in the free state of Florida. The good news is that the governor and the Surgeon General are here and they're not going to let that happen. When this law is put into place here in Florida, physicians will flood to our state. Having a Florida license will provide physicians security that political speech and differences of medical opinion won't cost them their ability to take care of their patients. I join the governor, the Surgeon General, and thousands of other physicians and healthcare heroes to declare that we need to buck the CDC. We need our doctors to have their own opinions about how to take care of their patients. With this law in place, these protections will make Florida the sanctuary state for physicians. Now we just need to get the legislature to do its part and get this done for our doctors, for the citizens of Florida, and for our fearless leader, Governor Ron DeSantis. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much to Dr. Ward. He brings up a good point about some of the stuff that we've seen coming down the pike. You guys remember summer of 2020, we were saying we need to have the school year. There's not going to be any changes. They need to be in school. The American Academy of Pediatrics initially was like, kids need to be in school because that's where the evidence was in the data. Well, then the teachers' unions got a hold of them, and then they changed the guidance, and then that's when they really embraced things like forced masking for 8 hours a day. And so you see interest groups impacting these professional organizations and the CDC itself. Once Biden became president, you had the unions going in there and disrupting the guidance that, and it may not have been the best guidance, but they made it a lot worse because of politics. And that's just unfortunate when it becomes politics. And you know, some of these groups and these bureaucracies, like sometimes I just think, you know, we need a total and complete shutdown until we can figure out what the hell is going on with them. Dr. Raj Bendry, come on.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you very much, Governor, for having this bill here. This is a very important bill, very, very important. I'm a physician who had to take the Hippocratic Oath, and this is a very important oath, and the primary aspect of the oath is where the physician agrees not to do any harm. Primum non nocere, do no harm. And that's a really, really important point there, because what we're seeing right now is the physicians have completely relinquished that part of their oath, and very disturbing. So this this bill is very important to protect the patients. Well, it allows free speech for physicians, which allows them to engage each other, discuss openly their thoughts, and whenever you have open discussion and exchange of ideas, you get real science. You get people exchanging ideas and going back and forth and coming up with a plan which is meaningful, as opposed to mandates that are put down from a centralized authority, which is never a good thing. So thank you very much for the bill. Hopefully it gets through and it protects the patients and the physicians. Thank you.
So we're also happy to have Dr. Ellen McKnight over from Escambia County. So she's got her own practice, and she's going to come up and say a few things. So thank you.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis. Can you hear? Because, okay, I may have to be on my tippy toes, I'm sorry. As a practicing physician for over 30 years, I can attest to the development of disturbing trends in the practice of medicine. Those disturbing trends include the quelling of vigorous medical debate, the intentional silencing of physicians, the assault on off-label prescribing, and the callous disregard for the sanctity of the decisions that the doctor and patient make together in the exam room. For my entire career, the highly educated, skilled physician was thought to be the only one capable to weigh the risk-benefit ratio of a potential treatment. Not career bureaucrats, not media talking heads, and not governors. And I'm so thankful that our governor did not attempt to practice medicine out of the governor's mansion with a one-size-fits-all policy that many other governors instilled. Physicians who dare to think for themselves, dare to openly discuss promising clinical observations, or dare to promote innovative treatments are being threatened with revocation of their medical licenses and their board certification status. It is career-ending if a physician loses his or her board certification or license to practice medicine. A doctor recently told me that he would rather be fired than lose his license or board certification status because, quote, "At least I could still get a job in this messed up system if I wanted." It is the "if I wanted" part of that statement that should give us all pause. I believe good quality physicians facing yet another unnecessary obstacle when treating patients, such as censorship of speech or interference in the doctor-patient relationship, may retire early or choose to do something else altogether. We need to encourage free thought in medicine, and that can occasionally be controversial. We need brave doctors who are willing to express their opinions even if it challenges the orthodoxy. If there is no free thought, then vigorous scientific debate cannot exist. If doctors cannot act upon and speak out about their clinical observations, then medical advancements will be thwarted. If these boards overstep their authority and unjustly revoke the medical license or board certification of a doctor simply for voicing his or her opinion, they will be held accountable in the state of Florida. And if we are able to pass these much-needed protections for patients and physicians, the state of Florida will be at the forefront of the movement to protect freedom of expression and will be, as we often are, a model for the rest of the nation.
One of the things that I kind of learned just going through the last couple years, prior to COVID, I went to the doctor when the Navy told me to back in active duty. They actually put a lot of shot. I don't know what the hell they were putting in me. Now I would ask more questions, but it's all good. But I didn't really have. It just wasn't something I was doing. And then we had our kids, and then we're involved with that with my wife and everything, and that was that. And then COVID comes, and I start to see the practice in terms of how the response to treating COVID patients. And the one thing that you really see crystal clear is the extent to which big pharma, they have a hammerlock over the medical establishment in this country. It's just true. And so much of it is being driven by these massive, very powerful, very wealthy pharmaceutical companies. And it is really, I think, contributing to the cribbing of thought and debate within the medical profession, because it's like if you want to try to do a treatment that's not a big pharma product, it's almost like that's not even discussed. Like they just don't want you to do that. And so I think that having seen that and just seeing the influence, it is a profound influence, and that's just the reality. And there have been discussions about how pharma influences legislation, Congress, all that, and I'm sure that there's some truth to that. But in this particular instance, with how the medical establishment really in lockstep, with the biggest drug companies, is that really the extent of the debate that we want to see, or do we want to be able to have robust protections for practitioners? I know where we stand in Florida. I know what we're going to do, and if we can get this legislation over the finish line, be able to sign it, and when we sign it, we'll have great protections. We'll also be sending a message to people throughout the country that Florida, yes, it's a refuge from people seeking to flee bad blue states, high crime, taxes, but it's also a refuge for physicians who just want to practice their craft freely like they were intended to do in the first place. So let's get this done. Thank you, guys. All right, we have any questions out there?
Do you have a response to the current state of Ukraine?
I've addressed it a bunch of times. I think at the end of the day, the 2 points that I've made is you have somebody like Putin who's really just sitting on a bunch of gas and oil. That's all he has. His society's really hollowed out, but he sends so much to Europe and now to the United States because Biden came in and he reduced our domestic capacity. We were energy independent prior to Biden taking office. Now you see what's happening to people at the pump. Oil just hit $115 a barrel. I think it's going to go to $150 a barrel or maybe even more. What does that mean for you at the pump? It means gas is going to be $4 or $5 a gallon within the next few months. That is going to have a huge impact on people's family budgets. So just from an economic perspective, shutting down Keystone, nixing ANWR, not allowing production on federal lands, that has absolutely contributed to the massive spike we've seen in energy prices. And the thing is like, what are you going to do? You're just not going to commute to work? You're just not going to have your home in a summer air condition? Of course, you need to do, and it's tough for people. So it's a huge impact on families' budgets. But then from beyond just the economic, from a national security perspective, is our nation more secure when we're energy independent or when we're helping to fuel regimes like Putin's regime? I want to be energy independent, and that's what we should be. And so what he's able to do, because he has now, they've doubled what they're sending in the United States since Biden took office. They have a huge impact in terms of what's going on with Europe, that is fueling his ambitions. And if you had energy independence, you could sock him on that, and it would be much more difficult for him to sustain what he's doing. And look, this is just, it's sad to say, but when Biden fumbled the Afghanistan, when you had 13 service members killed, when you left all that equipment behind, when you left a bunch of other Americans behind, the humiliation of that experience was something that Russia was watching, China was watching, Iran was watching, and that really whetted the appetite of some of the world's worst authoritarians. And so they feel emboldened now because they think they can get away with a lot. And I think that Putin would probably not have done this if he thought the United States was strong. But I think he thinks that the United States is weak because of the impotence of Biden's administration, and he's doing some really bad stuff right now. And it's sad to see. Yes, sir.
Governor, Citizens Insurance, which is one of the state's largest home insurers, is considering raising their rates by 11%. What's your opinion on that?
Well, we're seeing costs go up across the board on everything, including the homeowners insurance. I mean, this is a big issue. We did a big reform recently. It's taking effect now. It's going to take some time. I've asked the legislature to do more to be able to have reform so that the incentives are aligned, so that rates could be stable. I mean, look, insurance, people understand, like, if it goes up a little bit, but when you have these big increases, I mean, it really hits people. And so we want to be there for consumers. There's a lot of tomfoolery still in the market in Florida with how people are gaming it. We've tried to cut back on some of these junk lawsuits, but you still have some out there. So we've got to do that to put the consumer first. I do think you're going to see some benefit with new companies coming in because we have done some good reforms, but it just takes some time. You got a lot of companies who were here during Irma, and they've been saddled with a lot of litigation. You know, we had, and Jimmy would know the stats better than me, but we had in the most recent year where they have statistics, 18% of all property insurance claims were filed in Florida, but it was like 80% of all the litigation related to that was in Florida. That is what's driving up rates, and that's a big problem for a lot of people. So we've done a lot. You know, obviously there have been problems in this market for a long time. We want to do more, and again, the goal is let's have a stable insurance rates, and let's make sure we're working out for the consumers. Anybody else? Yes.
Where are we on constitutional carry?
Put it on my desk. I'll sign it. Happy to do that. Yes, sir.
Yes, Governor. Florida has a medical marijuana law, but it's a little bit more narrow than maybe a few other states. In the context of this bill, is it time to maybe look at that?
How so? What would you do?
It defines all the diseases and maybe not giving the doctors and patients a chance to discuss other applications of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these guys may know, but I'm pretty sure that was a constitutional amendment that had specific parameters. And so if you wanted to legislate beyond that, you'd have to actually change the Constitution. I think as it's implemented now, it does exhaust what was mandated by there. Actually, maybe you wouldn't have to do it. I don't know. I'd have to look at that language. So, but at the end of the day, when I became governor, it really hadn't been implemented. We said that the people had passed it, and let's implement it. And so we've implemented it and been able to move it forward, I think, better than most people thought we'd be able to do. Yes? Across the country? You know off the top of your head?
Zero in Florida last year because our Florida Board of Medicine is beholden to you guys.
Yeah, so, we appoint the board, so we have an ability to, to make sure that we have good licensing board here. The problem is that, that those members change, new people come in, and there's not really protections. You're just hoping that they're not doing this. Other states, they've put people in place who really want to be aggressive at taking people's credentials and taking people's licenses. And so in Florida, we've set a kind of a standard of we want people to be able to practice. At the same time, you see a lot of trouble on the horizon for what's going on. And the thing is you have different states. There's people that are licensed in different states. There's different rules in different states. It's not like it's the same thing. So states have always traditionally been able to do this, and so we want to make sure that we have a wider berth for people when we're going forward. So let's see, if we're able to get it through, maybe we'll come here and sign the bill. We'll see what we can do. So, thank you, guys. Thanks.
John, this way? Thank you. Thanks so much.
Again,
Good to see you again. Thank you.